I came to the conclusion that I was not religious, that I was spiritual. And I think that kind of made me want to understand the real thing, the real like belief, like who are we praying to? And so that really kind of radicalized me in a way. I also feel like being a Jehovah's Witness, you're a little radical because they're very like, anti-establishment. So I grew up not saluting the flag. I was not standing for the national anthem. I was not believing in anyone's Santa Claus. No white man was coming down the chimney. So like, there's a lot of things I think about just having a radical worldview that requires you to kind of initially kind of divorce yourself from the things that you have been told are true. And I think that it taught me early age to question my reality and to question the things that, are kind of supposed to be givens, as we navigate the world.
Hey y'all, welcome to Inside Out Podcast Season 2. I'm your host, Yha Mourhia. The intention of this podcast is to enrich your life with behind the scenes interviews and conversations from thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and creators about how they live their lives from the inside out. Enjoy. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Inside Out Podcast. Today, I have Ashley Simpo. If you don't know who she is, stay tuned to learn more. We are going to dive into all things community, motherhood, personhood, and what really is self-care. Stay tuned. Ashley Simpo is a Brooklyn-based writer, content strategist, and author of a kid's book about divorce. As the former managing editor and senior editorial writer for Crown Mag, she's interviewed the likes of Tracee Ellis Ross. Her bylines have been featured in Huffington Post, Essence, Mother Tongue, Zora, The New York Times, Insider, US Today, and Marie Claire. Ashley is dedicated to writing about motherhood and civic issues through the lens of race, culture, and politics. Welcome to Inside Out Podcast, Ashley. All the way from Brooklyn. I'm here in Los Angeles.
Yes, and I bet the weather is much better.
I haven't stepped out. So I was in Atlanta for 3 weeks. I just got back on Monday, and I know it wasn't like New York cold, but it was cold. It was cold in the ATL. So when I got back here, I felt like it was just like extremely warm.
It can get pretty cold in Atlanta. My mom lives there.
Cold. We're going to dive in. I want to know, so you are originally from the Bay Area, yes?
Yeah, born in Oakland. And then I lived in Sacramento also for a bit and a few other cities in the Bay Area. So that's my home turf.
I'm from the Bay too, so it's a very special place to me. Tell me more about your early childhood. Like, were you always writing? Were you kind of a reclusive child? A lot of people assume writers that way. Or were you more outgoing and curious?
I was really more of a reclusive child. I think within my family environment, I was definitely the outspoken kid. I was the youngest sister, the youngest sibling. And so I was the mouthy one. I was the one that would like challenge the rules a little bit more in the home. And then I think probably the most important element of my childhood, which I think influenced me being a writer, is that my parents were at the time Jehovah's Witnesses. And if you know anything about that community, that religion, it's very insulated. And so you can't always do the things that you want to do and play with the kids that you want to play with. And so I did have a lot of alone time. I had a lot of being at home kind of by myself. I read a lot of books. I read books that probably were not in my age range because I was a really good reader. So I would pick up The Color Purple way too young. And I journaled. I started journaling from a really young age. My mom gave me a journal when I was 6 and she was like, just write whatever you feel like writing in it and try to write every day. And I did. I've written in a journal in some form or fashion every single day of my life since then. I have a huge stack of them in my closet. And I think that kind of shaped my ability to hear my own thoughts and put those thoughts onto a page, which I think is the first thing I fell in love with. Wow, I can think through my stories. I can make sense of the things that I'm feeling if I just write it down. And yeah, so I've been writing ever since. That was kind of the origin story of that.
I had some friends that were Jehovah's Witnesses, and I grew up very fundamental Christian. So there were a lot of rules. Not all the same rules, but there were a lot of rules. How has that played a role, do you think, in adulthood in the way that you are so passionate about liberation? Because that's something I've had to think about for myself as well.
That's a good question. So I mean, we were Jehovah's Witnesses until I was about 12. And after my mom left, my parents got a divorce and my mom left that religion. And so around 14, 15, I think I just started getting really curious about, what God means to me. When you have your definition of God and spirituality kind of defined for you, and then that's removed from your reality, you have to go searching for your own definition of it. And I think that really got me started down a journey of just figuring out, what is the difference between this religion and that religion? What is their idea of God versus this idea of God? And finding so many similarities and commonalities between all of these different religions. There's a Messiah, there's a belief of end of times or whatever it is. And I came to the conclusion that I was not religious, that I was spiritual. And I think that kind of made me want to understand the real thing, the real, like what are we praying to? And so that kind of radicalized me in a way. I also feel like being a Jehovah's Witness, you're a little radical because they're very anti-establishment. So I grew up not saluting the flag. I was not standing for the national anthem. I was not believing in anyone's Santa Claus. No white man was coming down the chimney. So there's a lot of things I think about just having a radical worldview that requires you to kind of initially kind of divorce yourself from the things that you have been told are true. And I think that it taught me at an early age to question my reality and to question the things that, are kind of supposed to be givens, as we navigate the world. And so I'm always ready to challenge an idea or scrutinize it. And I think the thing that really solidified for me also because of growing up that way was I didn't really want to be a part of anything that wasn't for everyone. I didn't really want to be a part of any kind of change or progress in the world if it didn't impact everybody. I was not of the mind, and I'm still not of the mind of well, we can go, but you can't go. This is for these people that believe this and that believe this are over here. I don't want, and I've said this before, a lot of people are probably saying it right now in this moment, is just nobody is liberated unless we are all liberated. Nobody's free unless we're all free. So I think that really came from my early days of questioning, being part of a religion that was so exclusive and that not fitting with my soul and feeling well, how come we get to know, but they don't know? I don't like that. That's definitely had a huge impact on my later years.
Yeah. I remember asking my dad, I think I see where I am. I was in the kitchen, I'm from San Jose, so I remember exactly where I was. I think I was early college, but I've asked a couple of times in my life, but I was like, well, what happens to babies? If you gotta, people are just going to hell. I started to get bothered. All of a sudden I was, you know what I mean? I was like, wait, I'm uneasy that there's just people who perhaps never got the opportunity in their short or long lifetime, right, to know Jesus, and they're just going to hell. I just couldn't. I just couldn't. I couldn't deal. And so, and I'm still a Christian, but I very much so, I understand the word differently, and I'm able to distinguish, what people impose upon our spirituality in general versus what is. And like you said, if it's not for everybody, then what's it all even for? You know what I mean? What's it all even for? And there's so much conversation now in our society, literally right now, about the idea of chosenness, right? And so how are we the select few and the rest of them are damned? What is that? What does that even mean? And then you connect it to colonialism, and it's just, it opens up a whole new can of worms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's value in like releasing yourself of that hole and all the things you can imagine after that.
Talk to me about relocating to Brooklyn, to Bed-Stuy. I believe it was in 2008, if I'm correct, right? 2008, you
Yeah.
relocated. And I want to just share an
Yeah.
excerpt from, it's from Kindred Parents. You wrote it back in October 2023. And then I want to dive into this experience and the experience of Black existence, which was just so poignant for me. So you say, there's something so specific about hearing words of affirmation from someone who looks like you in a world that faults you for existing as anything but white, cis, or male. For Black folks, a well-served, well-intentioned compliment feels like a wash of sun over our skin, a deep reminder of our humanity. While it feels so incredibly spiritual, it likely doesn't always sound that way to the untrained ear. And we got a little bit, sis, that yellow is yellowing. Come on, fresh braids. Hey, yo, I'm just trying to get like you, my brother. You look casket sharp. If you don't know us, you won't realize that these words, with their distinct abruptness and fragmented delivery, are actually a prayer of protection, a covering of love, a poem. First of all, you are a writer, and I just love it. It felt good to even read that.
Appreciate you, sis. I really do. Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah. I was like, I'm a trained actor. So I'm like, ooh, those words felt good. That was delicious.
You did that. Like, I want you to read all my articles. Yeah, I want you to do all of it.
Hey,
you did the voice. That was great.
Talk to me about that because I moved in 2013, so you were there like about 5 years ahead of me. But talk to me about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting because I moved to New York before I had never stepped foot in New York. I had never been to New York. I had kind of like that stars in my eyes kind of idea of New York, like, oh, it's this great bustling place. It's so great, and I think it's so funny because, as I said, I have thousands of little journals, and one of them is from probably the 6th grade. And inside the cover, I wrote life goals, and it was writer, move to New York, fall in love. Those were my life goals. That was it. And I forgot all about it, but I think that kind of stuck with me. And I was 23. I was in a relationship with someone at the time who was like mapping out our life. He was like, we're going to get married. We're going to move to Houston, Texas. I'm going to buy us a house. Like, it was very like, I think another version of me would have run toward it, and felt like, oh, this is great. My life is set. And there was a part of me that felt like, running from it and was very afraid and was kind of nervous and felt like, I don't think I'm ready to decide who I am yet. Like, I don't think I know what I want, which is a perfectly normal thing to feel at 23. And then I had a girlfriend who moved to Brooklyn from the Bay. At this time I was living in Hayward, moved to Brooklyn, and I knew her from college, and she kept calling me and just giving me a little bit of insight about what her life in Brooklyn was like. And it sounded dope. It was like, a lot of people from the Bay were moving out there at the time. I think like when I moved out there was a little bit of a collective growing. But when I first got out there, I think my intention was, I want to be unafraid. I want to like embrace being in a new environment where I don't have the various lifelines that I'm used to having access to, and just kind of see if I swim or not. And I feel like if you're going to do that at any point in your life, it should be when you're 23, or like, when you kind of like, you don't have much to lose. And so, I just moved out here kind of on a whim. I told all my friends, my family, I'm moving to New York. I think I told my boyfriend at the time, we lived together. I was like, I think I'm going to move to New York. And nobody believed me. And I packed my shit and sold my car and just dipped. And that was it. I felt very afraid. I was, I think I had a couple job interviews lined up, and moved in with my friend that I knew from the Bay. And it was scary as hell. But I think I learned a lot about myself, about my own ability to survive and to be, find resources and figure things out. And, Brooklyn was also a very different space at the time. So I don't regret it, but it was definitely one of those things I don't think I would ever repeat outside of that kind of space that I was in at that age. It was a brave move.
I did my move at 25. And I went to
Yeah.
grad school, so there was an anchor, but I didn't know. I had only been there for my grad school audition, which was in May of 2013, and then by the time I'm in September, I'm moving there. And
Wow.
I too think I'm so proud that I did it, but I would never do it again. Something the way that I did then. I don't think I have that in me. But you know, who knows? Who knows? Never say never. But what? So going back
Right.
though to the richness of identity. I mean, coming from the Bay, we have identity. But what did
Yeah.
Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy in particular, open up for you? Because you're so, forward thinking and you're so open about the exploration of identity, especially as pertains to motherhood and what does that look like, right? But what seeds were planted in that time of your life?
It opened my worldview, I think, which was really important. And I feel like I've said this before, maybe you can relate, but we have like 3 or 4 races in the Bay. It's like you're Black, white, Mexican, or like Asian. You know what I mean? It's like there's so many more things that exist on these spectrums. And I think the Bay is very diverse, but in terms of like identities that we kind of see, it was very limited. And I think I had never been in a space where like there's multiple languages being spoken. There's multiple, origins of all the Black folks in my neighborhood. They're not all from, the South. They're actually from other countries. And just being around that kind of expansive diversity, it was different than what I grew up around. So that was one thing I think. And I feel like New York had kind of like, there's like an old school charm to New York that you don't really get in other places. We were still hailing cabs and calling, town cars back in 2008. So it was like very, you had to get around. Uber was not around. So you had to walk everywhere. And yeah, I think it just made me feel a little bit more connected to the human experience. And I think when you are in a space where there's a lot of differences, you it kind of highlights what we all have in common, and learning how to put myself there and get to know people and being open to forming a community, which I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time. But I think that, community becomes a lot more important when you are 3,000 miles away from your family. And I think that was probably one of the lessons that I learned was like, you can find people who see the world similar and who have the same needs or the same ideas or whatever you have in common with folks. And you can show up for folks and they can show up for you and you can grow your own community. So I think that was kind of my first taste at that. I think I had always been in an environment where I knew folks and I knew everybody. So, yeah. And I think that made me, I think because of that also, I'm always thinking about who in the room might be left out of the conversation, or who in the room might not have the same resources as other folks have. And I think I've been mindful of that mostly because moving to New York, I was that person. So many, like, I'm trying to figure it out. So, a lot of people who reached out to me and who showed love and support to me, I feel that that's just like the notion of paying it forward,
What are some key ways? And when you moved there, if I recollect, your son was 3, right? Young, about 3, is that right?
Yeah.
And what were some of the challenges in that you've really taken and really transmuted into how you approach your work, for women and people who are parenting?
I mean, it's tough to move anywhere with kids. So that was definitely, there was a lot of intention behind that too. Me and his father, we were already deciding that we were going to divorce. And so the decision was to move back here as a family and then sort out the divorce once we got here. And I already had, because I moved here previously, I already had really great friends. I stayed with a really good friend of mine who's like a big sister for almost a year. She had this huge apartment. And so very few people are going to let you and your 3-year-old move into their apartment. You know what I mean? Like that alone is a taking on. And so,
Mhm.
I think again, it really taught me that I get to have a whole experience as a person, as a mother. I don't have to limit myself. And I think that seeing my son adapt to a new environment and kind of grow into this space really taught me a lot. But I feel like a big part of it was just allowing people to show up for me and allowing people
Mhm.
who maybe I wouldn't expect them to, or they don't have to. My community is not exclusively full of mothers that have the same lived experience as me. It's full of, single women and women who don't want kids at all, men who don't want kids. There's a lot of different identities there. And so I think it was a big lesson in, finding your way through. But if you lead with kind of the intention of uh, finding people that you can build something with. Like I'm going to show up for you in a way. I'm not going to ask for anything. I'm going to ask you what you need, and I'm going to trust that you'll do the same. It doesn't necessarily have to be transactional. It's just it's reciprocal. It's reciprocal.
So I would, diving into that, I would love to hear more about the birth of mothering while single. Um, how did you feel tasked to that calling? Do you consider it a ministry? And what are your hopes? And in no particular order, we can revisit some of those questions, but what was the birth of that? Because my parents are still married, but I have observed my mom. She says things that like, and I'm not a mother yet, but my mom will say things like, there's things you don't understand about the isolation of motherhood. There's something that I feel a lot of people just experience in mothering that is just isolating. So, what called you to that ministry? Was it the isolation in itself?
It's interesting because I don't think I felt isolated as a single in the same way. I felt isolated as a married mother, I'll be honest, in a
Mm,
different way than I did as a single mom. As a married mother, I felt very much like my community and society at large was like, she's taken care of. She got her man, she's married, she's good to go. We don't have to check on her anymore. And
mm,
maybe that's even what your mom's speaking to, is that the
mhm,
kind of the way that we kind of set marriage up traditionally is, that's your community, your family, your kids, your husband is your initial community. It's the thing that you hold tightest to. I remember I saw an article, I think in the Atlantic. I can send you the link. I might have touched on
yes,
it in that
please.
article, but it was something like there was a study done, and one of the many results that they found was that married folks are less likely to show up to a party. They're less likely to hang out with friends. They're less likely to show up to things that people are doing, and regardless of whether or not they have kids. And I think it's like we do kind of have that built-in mentality of like, once you're coupled up, you're good to go. And so
Mhm,
it wasn't until I think I left that marriage and the world was seeing me as a single mother. Um, and I was being told that I was a single mother, even though I did not feel like a single mother because my son has a father. I have a parenting partner. Um,
mhm,
that I started to realize that the loneliest thing about it is the way society looks at you. And, um, either you're married and you're fine, you're taken care of. And then when you're a single parent or you're an unmarried parent, you're kind of seen as a problem. You're kind of seen as like why the neighborhood's going down the drain, or why the statistics are this or that for, whatever. And there's a lot of single mother statistics that are really ugly. Um, and I think for me, I never could accept that. I'm like, well, I don't want to be identified as someone who is inherently struggling, or someone who is inherently doing something wrong, or, I failed at this. And so now I have to live with this. Um, and so I think my thinking changed around what it means to be an unmarried parent. Like, um, are you inherently wrong, or do we as a society have a problem with the way we view family? Do we as a society have a
mhm,
problem with the way we support families? And I started questioning the bigger issue and kind of the community issue. Um, living in Brooklyn, finding housing as a parent is ridiculous. You know, you're competing with people who have multiple roommates and you have one or two incomes. And so you get kind of served this kind of shitty, you know, deal. And it just made me feel very, it just kind of activated my protective thing where I wanted all mothers, whether you're married or you're not married, to feel safe and to feel supported. And I feel like if we can do that for the women or the parents, mothers in our communities, it has an impact on the greater collective, because you're talking about little kids that are going to be your neighbors one day. And so I think I really like tap into that interconnectedness that we have with each other. So in terms of mothering while single, it's worded that way specifically because I don't think single mother fits everybody. But if you are single, you're dating, you don't have a partner living in the home, this is for you. And so it's really just, we meet every Thursday, we hop on a Zoom call, and we talk through what we're dealing with or what we're going through, how we feel. And I'm working with this really great mental health, she's a mental health coach and therapist in training. So she's finishing her stuff to be an official therapist. But we built this kind of program for 8 weeks, and it's just like a guided discussion group. So we have a topic every week that we're talking about. And last night we talked about talking to our kids about divorce and separation and how those conversations go. Next week, we're going to be talking about co-parenting and like how to be amicable with the folks that we might feel, you know, tension with. And I think that the most important element of that is, and the thing that we kind of noticed right away was, we all have different stories, different reasons for why we consider ourselves to be single, different reasons, you know, different amounts of kids, different whatever situations. But we have a lot in common in terms of how we view ourselves, how the world views us, what our fears are, and what our various challenges are. So I think that was kind of like a really rewarding moment, was to kind of walk away from that conversation and know that the motherhood experience is very much a collective experience. We all really understand what the other person is going through. I think that parents and especially mothers, we have this tendency to be like, oh, you have an 11-year-old, me too, we're best friends now, like, call me. Well, I understand what you're going through. And yeah, so that's kind of the story of that. And, you know, we're going to see how it goes. This is like the trial run. And hopefully we'll keep offering it, because so far it's been a really great experience.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you, because I know it's only running for 8 weeks. How far are you into it? We just started it last week, I think, right?
We just finished week 2. So week 2 yesterday, into week 3.
I was saying, for anyone who might be interested in learning more, you know, when they hear this episode, is there a link we can provide them to like sign up for a wait list or to be contacted the next time you have your next sessions open up?
Yeah, the wait list is open. I'll share the link so that folks can join the next one for sure.
Okay. Awesome. So, you know, unselfishly, I see myself as an extension of other women who are not yet mothers of people. You and I started in the pre-interview talking about, you know, motherhood, the expansiveness of what it is to mother. And so I would love to dive in deeper to your viewpoint of that. And specifically, you know, for me as a woman who doesn't have children, there's often, and I'm how old am I? I'm 36. I'll be 37 this year. I'm getting to that point where I'm like, how old am I? There's often, and this is definitely imposed on by society, but also, you know, our just culture in general, right? Society, family, church, all the things. There's this feeling of guilt and shame that not all women feel, not all people feel, but that there are people that I do know who, like myself, have toiled between this of like, what did I do wrong because I'm not a mother yet? Where did I misstep? Should I have just married him? You know what I mean? Should I just have, you know, those kinds of things. And so what do you have to say to that?
I love this question though. And I love having conversations like this because first of all, I wish it was a conversation that I had with the mothers in my environment. And admittingly, I didn't have very many in my environment aside from my mother and aunties and stuff like that. Right. But like peers, I think a lot of my friends didn't have kids. I had one best friend who got pregnant shortly after high school. And so there was that experience of seeing what that looks like, which is a very specific experience. And I don't think that I had a frank conversation. I wasn't as old as you. I was 28 when I had my son. So it was like, you have the maturity of being able to say, well, reflecting on like my 20s, did I make the right choices for me? Am I happy about that? Like you have that kind of ability to reflect on it. And that presents this opportunity to have a really frank conversation about it. So I just love that these are questions in the first place. But I think that we have, first of all, women is like, you no matter what you do, you messed up pretty much. Like whether if you had the kid, then you have too many kids, or you're not raising the kid right. Or if you don't have the kid, then, well, why don't you have children? And like, where did you do wrong? I feel like women cannot please the world no matter what we do. And so I always want to like initially just unburden us with that. Like, it's not just moms that get the short end. It's not just single women without kids or, women without kids that get the short end. It's really all of us. And I also feel like something that really became true to me through this experience, my own, motherhood journey, is that some of the most important people in my life and in my son's life are women without children for a very specific reason. Because an auntie is not the same as a mama. An auntie is going to have different capacity to listen to you. An auntie is going to have, more energy to listen, to show up. There are only so much that I can do as a parent who's concerned about, his moral compass and the roof over his head, and if his pants are too tight, and what his teacher said, and did he do his homework, and then also have full capacity to be interested in all his interests and take it, and do all those things. Even between me and his father, it's just impossible for two people to raise even one child. I mean, I really do believe in the whole village, sentiment. And so I think I always feel like there's this angst that happens between women with kids and women without kids, where it's like, I'm better than you because I have children. Oh, I'm better than you because I have time and I can sleep in the morning, or I can go on vacation on a whim, or whatever the differences are. And I feel like that's not our argument. That's like society wants us to feel that way, but that's not really our beef. I think that we have more in common than we realize. And I also fully believe that there are multiple and fully important other ways to mother. You do not have to give birth to or adopt or foster a child in your home in order to show up and utilize your God-given motherly instincts. And also, I really wish that the narrative was to women without children: you are so needed in your community. You are so needed in every aspect of your community. And this idea that you haven't grown up yet or all the way because you don't have children is wild to me. And there's also the element of like, I feel like when it comes to motherhood and even marriage, people get mad at me for saying this. We've been lied to in so many different ways about like even what that really looks like and entails. I wrote a book about divorce and I had a column about it. So I get a lot of people telling me about their business. And let me tell you something, your friends are not happy. Most of them are not really as happy as they seem. They're going through the same challenges that you are in terms of identity and self and love and all of that, but they're doing it within the confines of marriage. That doesn't mean that everything is perfect and wonderful on the other side of it. And I think it's really important to expand your definition of what community can look like, aside from focusing on a romantic partner or, the goal of having a family. Because that can go away. You know what I mean? Like you might end up in that relationship. And I always say, like, if you want to have children, would you want to have children alone? Would you want to have children without a partner? Because your partner is not guaranteed, but the kid is. So even if you plan and you have 5 years in the game with this person and you guys went to premarital counseling and you did all the things, y'all could still break up. And if you do, you still have the task of raising a human being. So if you're doing it for the look or for the validation or for the social cred that you get when you have done those things, would you do it without that? Because when that goes away, all you got is you and whatever community you've built for yourself.
That's deep. What you said too earlier about, no, that's deep. What you said earlier too about the isolation that women feel even being married, right? And having children. That's major, you know. I have seen it time and time again with my peers, within my own mom. There's this idea. First of all, I think that a lot of women, a lot of mothers feel like, as we're speaking about society, you have to live up to this thing. Like it's all of a sudden a brand. You know what I mean? Like it's a brand. And a lot of single or women who don't have children kind of, even if we feel as though we would want children, you start to kind of wear this brand because society begins to box you in and you're to be this way and this way. And that also becomes further isolating because then we don't lean on each other. How are we transparent with one another? You know, do you have, or do you have a community or how do you really foster community with women who have children and don't have children?
I think differently. I navigate both of those as a mother. So, you know, when it comes to my friends who don't have kids, for example, I always like to correct them. You actually do, my son. You have a kid. So, you know, I said this in the group, and I think one of the members of the group was kind of like taken aback by it, like, wow, I didn't think about that. The same way you would for any other detail of yourself or your identity or who you are, your personhood. For me, if you're in my life and you're a friend, then you accept my wholeness and the fact that I come with a child. That's not just a conversation for men I might date. That's for homies too. If you invite me consistently to things I can't bring my son to, we got to have a conversation. If you you only come through when my kid's not around, we got to have a conversation because I'm a 2-person community and you got to take us both. And I think that mentality has allowed me to shed folks that maybe were not seeing community the same way I do, and also make space for folks who do. And I do have homies who will come and hang out with my son or go take him to play basketball, or who consider him and want to create environments where he can be a part of it. And that, you know, they're familiar with him too. These are not blood relatives. These are friends. And I think that was one way, and that's always a way that I approach all friendships. I think that, you know, I'm 11 years in, my son is 11. I have friends who just had children on their first baby, and they are noticing that there's some friends who are falling off and they don't call them back as much, or they don't invite them out. And they're, you know, well, why is that? Or how should I deal with that? Should I talk to them? And my answer is always like, let people leave. If they're not a good fit for what has changed and shifted in your life, that's okay. That's information. It's not personal. Just accept it. And on the other side about, you know, making community with mothers, I really try to show up for people the same way I would want them to show up for me. I know that sounds so basic, but I really just feel like one of the safest things that mothers can do is have like a group chat and be honest and talk about what they've been through that day or what they're going through that week, and without judgment. I have a group chat with 2 of my close cousins. We're both, you know, all 3 of us are parents, mothers of boys. And it's a safe space. You know what I mean? If we're like questioning what's going on in society, if we have an issue with our kid, if, you know, we're dating and it's going weird, we can talk about that. And so I think that that's one way. And I also just learned to open myself up to people. You know, I'm at my son's school, so I want to get to know their moms around, or, you know, in the neighborhood, and just allowing things to organically grow and put myself there. It's kind of the same as you would in any other circumstance. It's the same as networking. It's the same as, you know, reaching across the table, so to speak, leading with how you can help first instead of what other people can do for you. But that's like, you know, I think it's important to have a community that works that way, where everybody has goals
Mhm.
aligned. And so everybody that is close to me does see community as an expansive and important and probably the most important element of life. And so that's
Yeah.
everyone's priority.
Thank you so much for saying, I mean, this and community and tribe. And I think about the ways that in our specifically Western society, and I'll even say to, to Black folk, Black Americans, and anyone of the diaspora, actually, in the idea of progress, right, as a people, and this is BIPOC people, Indigenous people across the board, has caused a more of a separation from what is necessary to sustain as a person. It's like the individual pursuit separates us from the very thing that sustains us in order to really evolve. That's how I feel. Would you agree? Do you have anything to add to that?
I definitely agree.
Yeah.
I think that my definition of self-care has expanded just recently, just
Mm.
within the last couple months, I think, because as awareness has grown about, Palestine, and it's I'll say et cetera, because it's not just Palestine, but even that, I think, whereas my self-care might have been defined by really keeping my environment safe feeling and not feeling
Mhm.
triggered and not, those things, that was really important to my self-care. And then I've come into a space now where it's like, well, maybe I need to be a little triggered because I need to be concerned about this too. um, I can't just feel and love my own personal safety and not be concerned with other people's personal, sense of safety as well. So no, I absolutely agree with that. I think that it's having a wider and collective view when it comes to all of those things is really important.
Absolutely. And when as it comes to, the role of the auntie and the role of the mother, the role, like all of these roles of the people in the tribe, the role of the storyteller, the roles that we have and how we're really able to heal, as a unit and grow and learn. And like you said, certain things, the idea of self-care being this isolation that prevents me from seeing into someone else's experience. At that point, if we are really all one, which I certainly believe we are, then you're cutting yourself off too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I
You
love
know?
I don't know who said it, but it was something like we are all, um, varied expressions of the same energy. I'm probably messed it up, but it's something to the effect of, we're all just expressions of the same thing. Like I'm having
Mhm.
my experience of this energy, you're having your experience of the energy, but it's the same energy. And so
Yes,
if we're only concerned with what's in front of our face, like you said, then that's not even really self-care because
it's not
you're
even
over
really.
there too.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe we're almost at time. How did that happen?
I know.
Um, what
I
a
have no idea.
what a great conversation. Before we close, though,
Yeah.
I want to. I love to ask my guests hurt, heal, joy. It's a segment I have, and it's what is currently hurting you. It could be, personal or in this world. What do you want to heal, and what brings you joy?
Those are great questions. Hurt, heal, joy. I would say, I honestly, what hurts me the most is just the genocide happening in the world. I mean, that is the most heartbreaking thing. Um, and just the reality of
Yeah.
the involvement of our own government and how that's kind of playing out. Um, heal, you said, what do I want to heal?
Yep.
Right.
Hmm.
Um, I think my own my own kind of relationship with creativity and expression. I feel like I've gone through sort of um, a self evolution in terms of how I want to use my writing and where I want it to go, what I want to do with it, and going through the process of allowing myself to explore new possibilities has been really healing. And I've been reading The Artist's Way, also very healing to just kind of go through that process. Um, and then hurt, heal, grow. Sorry, I have a horrible memory. You said grow,
Joy.
right?
Joy. What brings you joy?
Joy. Oh, what brings me joy? So many things. I think, yeah, I think community again. I think I've had a really rough week, but the thing that kept holding me in place and keeping me grounded has been my community. Having, one of my girlfriends dropped her baby off with me, and I got to hang out with a little baby because it's been so long since I've had a little one in my house. Just being able to give her the gift of silence for a couple hours, knowing that I had of service to her while she was unknowingly of service to me, because babies will heal your heart. Okay. But, and then getting together with friends tomorrow, just being able to kind of be in community with people. I'm really, really, I think, very blessed in that area. And that's always what brings me joy.
Yeah. You make me miss Brooklyn.
Come on back.
I do. I'm just like, this is something I do. I'm planning to come back in this summer. I'm a little landlocked right now. Well, yeah, a little bit because of work, but I am planning to come back in the summer. And when I do, I want to spend like a good 3 weeks. I haven't been in New York in a year and some change, which is the longest I've been gone since 2013. So, it feels very odd to not be there, but it's just something, you know how it is. It's the energy of Brooklyn and the energy of New York, and that community. It's a place too that really helps you understand community. Thankfully, it's a place where you can really build, which is beautiful. Yes. Well, I just wanted to thank you again so much. Any last words of encouragement about anything or nothing at all to our audience that you can share? Anything on your heart?
Man, that's a good question. I think I just want to say, if you have a list of goals this year, I hope that you include the work of expanding your definition of love and your definition of community beyond what we've been handed. And yeah, I think that's just like open up your worldview, open up your community view, open yourself up to new people, and grow.
I love that. Thank you, Ashley. Y'all, this has been another episode of Inside Out Podcast, our first virtual episode of this season, and it has went so well. Shout out to Riverside. Thank you for smooth sailing virtually 3,000 miles away. We are doing it. Ashley, before we go, how can people follow you, support you? What do you have next on your slate?
Thank you. So you can follow me on social media, Instagram and Twitter. Ashley Simpo is the handle on both of those platforms. And then you can also find me on Substack. I have a monthly essay series that is going to be very soon rebranding and expanding. And I would love to see some new folks join us there. And that link is also in my bio on Instagram for my Substack. So stay tuned for more there. That'll be
awesome. And we'll include it to the link in the link in the description box for this interview. Y'all stay tuned for more from Inside Out Podcast. Thank you. Peace. What's up, y'all? Wait. Before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for joining me on this journey. This has been another episode of Inside Out Podcast Season 2. If you like what you see, please remember to subscribe to Y'all Right Productions on YouTube. You can be in the know when the episode drops. If you prefer to listen to Inside Out Podcast, be sure to follow and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or Amazon Music. Last but not least, if you want to help me keep this podcast going, please join the Patreon community as a member for only $15 per month. And as a special token of my gratitude for all who keep this podcast going, I will send you a quarterly swag bag full of products from the Inside Out Podcast store, y'all. That's right. Thank you so much again. Stay tuned. Be blessed. Bye.